A lot happening this week with the return of buyers and the Reserve Bank proposing to remove LVR restrictions. Exciting news this week as the Reserve Bank proposes to remove LVR restrictions. The LVR restrictions were first imposed on the banks in 2013 as an attempt to rein in the property market and reduce high-risk mortgages. It was initially a lot tougher on Aucklanders and the rest of us got off a bit lighter. Then in 2016, tougher restrictions were extended nationwide with 40% deposit required for investors. The Reserve Bank had always maintained that the restrictions were a temporary measure. They'll be spending the next week consulting with banks, but if approved, this has the potential for a positive impact on the property market. Banks have been very prudent with their lending, but now the Reserve Bank wants them to loosen up the purse strings a bit. For buyers who have entered the market in the last 7 years, this will be new ground, but those a bit longer in the tooth will still remember the days of buying rentals with 10% or less deposit. I think a lot of investors have been frustrated by the inability to access trapped equity in their properties. The removal of LVRs will mean some investors will move into a position to buy again. Those who remember the days of being able to recycle out 100% of your deposit on an investment property will rejoice, but don't count your chickens too soon as we don't know yet how the banks will respond and if we will see a great deal of easing up. This is unlikely to change the serviceability criteria. The near-bank or second-tier lenders have been on the rise and this stands to give them another boost, as I think a lot of investors and home buyers will look to sidestep the serviceability criteria of the banks. If you're interested in second-tier lending, get in touch with a good mortgage broker as these lenders are only available through a broker. If you're looking for investment property, like any business, in uncertain times, cash flow is going to be king. Even more so now with the ring fencing of losses. If you're struggling to find good cash flow positive property, it might be a good idea to get some professional help in the form of a property finder. Make sure you maintain a good buffer for interest rate increases when calculating your yields, as it might take a couple of years for rents to catch up. While I'm not one to speculate, if you're looking to buy, some areas of Tauranga have better potential for future capital gain than others. Jump on the council's website and read up on the Te Papa Peninsula project. This outlines areas where council is proposing the intensification of residential property, similar to what Auckland did under the Unitary Plan. We don't have all the detail yet and the next release of information is due in July. The main areas affected by the proposal are the avenues, Tauranga South, Gate Park, Greaton and Parkvale. In Auckland, they went away from minimum land size and instead went to a model of maximum site coverage. This has led to a lot of multi-storey properties being built. There are also areas where terraced housing and apartments are allowed. This is following new government guidelines for residential property, so expect Tauranga's model to look very similar. Cash flow property is great. Cash flow property with development potential is better. We've received more info now on what real estate business will look like at level 3. Real estate agents will be able to enter clients' houses and also to take buyers through for private inspections. Buyers will need to supply information to the agent prior to viewing regarding their movements, recent contact and health, and agents will need to wear gloves and open all the doors and cupboards for the purchaser to keep the purchaser's experience contactless. Only 2 people from the same bubble will be allowed to enter the property at any one time, and agents will have to sanitize the property between viewings. Obviously, anyone who's been in contact with an infected person, is self-isolating or has been unwell won't be able to view. And on the flip side, if the occupier of the property fits any of these criteria, viewings won't be allowed either. There hasn't been any specific guidelines for rental properties, so agents will need to use a little common sense on this one. My opinion is that if a tenant isn't comfortable with buyers entering their bubble, then they should have the right to privacy. There's other tools we can use during level 3, so video, virtual tours and floor plans will become more important. I've been keeping an eye on my listing view counts on TradeMe and realestate.co.nz over the lockdown period. The start of the lockdown saw an initial drop in online viewings and inquiries which lasted the first couple of weeks, but there's been a definite upward swing over the last 2 weeks with online views pretty much returning to pre-lockdown levels and a good level of inquiry. I've even had buyers reaching out to book viewings ahead of the shift to level 3. There's definitely some hungry buyers out there, so it'll be interesting to see how the market responds as we roll through level 3. If you're a buyer or seller in this market, remember to stay positive and don't be overcome by fear. A few words here from economist Tony Alexander. There are always places selling for prices vastly different from RV, vastly different from what people expected heading into an auction, and vastly different from what some excessively optimistic, highly geared person paid for it in the previous year. Stay focused on the long-term factors and don't be dragged into making panic decisions because of a headline you've just seen. It's going to be awesome to see a lot of businesses back up and running next week. I do feel for those who can't reopen until level 2. Hang in there, guys. To quote Arnold Schwarzenegger, what we face may look insurmountable, but we are always stronger than we know. I hope you find some value in this video. Stay safe out there and keep moving forward.